The Tomb of Whispers. Deep in the scorched sands west of Luxor, an excavation team led by Dr. Elias Ward uncovered an unmarked tomb, untouched by time. The entrance, choked with ancient rubble, bore no hieroglyphs, no cartouche, just a single symbol carved into the stone, an eye sewn with thread. Locals warned them. They called it the Mouthless One's tomb. Legend spoke of a high priest punished by the gods for speaking a forbidden curse aloud, his lips sewn shut, his name stricken from history. But to Ward, superstition only sweetened the mystery. Inside, the air reeked of dust and old rot. The walls were smooth, unnaturally so, save for faint scratches, like fingernails dragged desperately across stone. No treasures adorned the tomb, no sarcophagus, just a single narrow chamber and a black basalt statue of a kneeling man, mouth stitched with golden thread, eyes wide with terror. Ward laughed. They buried fear itself. That night, their generator failed. In the flickering lantern light, whispers slithered through the dark. Not words, wet, gasping murmurs, like someone trying to speak without a tongue. The team dismissed it as wind. By morning, one of the workers, Kareem, was missing. His tent, soaked in blood, held only a trail of bare footprints leading back into the tomb. Ward descended alone. The statue was gone. In its place stood Kareem, knees bent, eyes wide, golden thread binding his lips. He trembled, hands raised in silent agony. Ward stumbled back, but the exit was gone. Walls had shifted. The air grew heavy, like wet cloth draped over his lungs. The whispers returned, closer, urgent, writhing into his ears. Speak the name. His lips trembled. Whose name? A force gripped his jaw. Invisible hands pried it open. His tongue moved against his will. Nem Koreth. The moment the name escaped, pain knifed through his face. Something stitched itself into him. Hot, metallic thread, sewing his lips shut in agonizing jerks. He tried to scream, but only blood gurgled past the seams. Above ground, the remaining team packed to flee. As they turned, Elias Ward emerged from the tomb, limping, trembling. They rushed to him but froze in horror. His mouth was sewn, his eyes hollow with terror. Behind him, the tomb's entrance sealed itself with a deafening boom, as if swallowing a secret whole. The whispers never stopped. Now the tomb waits, half buried by sand, its markers still bearing the shut eye. And some nights, when the desert wind dies, a voice, wet and strained, rises from beneath. Speak the name. The ritual beneath the pyramid. They said the pyramid of Nebkara was sealed for a reason, not for protection, but containment. Dr. Miriam Voss didn't care. She had excavated tombs across Egypt, but this one, untouched by tomb robbers and hidden beneath centuries of sand, was her obsession. Legends warned of a ritual that bound the pyramid with blood and fire. Her guides refused to approach. She went in alone. The narrow passage led to a black stone door, etched with symbols not seen in any known dynasty. Her fingers traced the deep grooves of the carving. A figure with the head of a jackal, holding a heart in one hand, and an ankh dripping with blood in the other. With a grunt, she forced the door open. Inside, the air was thick with decay. A stone altar dominated the chamber, surrounded by 4 jars, each sealed with wax and fresh crimson markings, as if the ritual had just ended. Hieroglyphs lined the walls, but they writhed and shifted before her eyes. A whisper echoed, not from her mind, from the walls. He who disturbs the ritual must complete it. She turned, but the doorway had sealed behind her. Her flashlight flickered. Then she saw him. A priest, tall and wrapped in tattered linen, his skull exposed beneath a golden headdress. His eye sockets bled sand. His hands were blackened stumps where flesh had been ritualistically burned away. He didn't walk. He glided. Miriam backed into the altar. Her hand brushed something cold, an obsidian dagger, ancient and sharp. 4 parts. 4 offerings. The priest rasped. The heart, the liver, the lungs, and the soul. She shook her head. No, I just came to study. He raised his arms. The jars began to pulse. Blood seeped from the cracks in the walls. Screams, centuries old, echoed through the chamber. Miriam clutched the dagger. The hieroglyphs began glowing. Her body moved on its own. The ritual had begun again. She plunged the dagger into her chest, not by will, but by curse. Her hand dug deep, extracting her own still beating heart, which fell into the jar, marked with the jackal. Her vision blurred. She screamed as her ribs cracked outward, offering her lungs to the air. The second jar opened by itself. The priest smiled. As her body collapsed, the final part of the curse completed. Her soul, screaming in agony, was dragged into the final jar. The altar drank her blood. The pyramid grew silent once more. Sand began to drift back over the entrance. Outside, the desert swallowed every sign she had ever been there. Deep inside the pyramid, the ritual circle glowed once more, waiting. Another archaeologist would come. They always did. The Curse of the Eye. Dr. Lena Maradi had spent a decade chasing whispers of the eye hieroglyphic, a forbidden symbol said to have been erased from temple walls and papyrus scrolls alike. When her team uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the sands of Saqqara, she knew she found it. The tomb was sealed with blackened stone, etched with a single glyph, the eye, drawn not in traditional ink, but something that shimmered like dried blood. Against the protests of her assistant, Omar, Lena pressed forward. "It's just a superstition," she scoffed, filming everything. "The eye is knowledge, and knowledge belongs to the living." Inside, the air was thick and dry, stale with centuries of silence. The walls were covered in strange depictions, figures gouging out their own eyes, jackals with human faces, and priests bleeding from their sockets as they worshipped the eye. Lena's breath caught as she approached the central altar, upon which sat a small obsidian tablet. The eye was carved into it, its lines pulsing faintly, as if reacting to her presence. She reached out. Omar screamed, "Don't touch it!" Too late. The moment her fingers brushed the stone, the tomb groaned. The torches flickered violently, then darkness. When Lena awoke, her eyes throbbed. Everything she saw was wrong. The sand bled upward. Omar's face contorted endlessly, melting and reforming with every blink. "I told you," he wept. "It sees through you now." The eye had opened in her mind. Visions assaulted her, sacrifices under eclipses, tongues ripped from screaming mouths, a priest hammering a needle into his skull to close the vision. Every moment she spent awake, the visions intensified. She saw death, not just hers, everyone's. The eye showed her the unraveling of souls. She tried to leave the tomb, but the passage was gone. Walls pulsed like flesh. Omar had gouged his own eyes out, whispering, "Only blindness is mercy." Lena clawed at her face, but couldn't break free. The eye wouldn't let her. She was found weeks later, wandering the desert, blind yet smiling, lips stitched shut with thin black wire. When rescuers tried to pry her mouth open, she screamed a single word: "See!" And every man present collapsed, blood pouring from their eyes. The footage she recorded surfaced online briefly before being scrubbed. Those who watched it reported hallucinations, seizures, and in 2 cases, permanent blindness. The eye lives on in digital echoes now, coded into pixels, etched into the minds of those who dare to look. Authorities deny its existence, but archaeologists vanish. Footage corrupts, and sometimes, in the dead of night, people wake screaming, eyes bleeding, whispering about the eye that watches from the dark. And once it sees you, you can never unsee it. The Lost Pharaoh, the Demon's Pharaoh, by the Prowler. All ancient civilizations have their own rituals, own religions, superstitions, demonic entities, curses, and the like. As the world began to advance and approach the modern age we find ourselves in today, ancient beliefs and superstitions became forgotten. When the world was still finding out about itself, however, is when our story takes place. When there were discoveries still to be made, and the world was in awe of the people who made them. The year is 1924, and the man who is in the headlines is Vincent Ravenscroft, famed explorer, archaeologist, and adventurer. He specializes in the occult, finding ancient civilizations' lost items that have been surrounded by mystery. He is the go-to man when finding relics pertaining to a lost civilization's connection to demonology, witchcraft, the occult, and the supernatural. He is an expert in secret societies, rumored secret sects, ancient rituals, and the like. He just made headlines from his dig in the hills of Mexico with his excavation find of the year, an Aztec sacrificial chamber filled with macabre elements from the past and endless corridors that led to a forgotten Aztec temple. The sacrificial chamber had many stone tables with straps and restraints attached, and on some of the tables laid the bone-withered remains of the sacrificed. In the center of the room sat a stone altar, and setting on the altar was a large, well-maintained wrapped book, a book that was whispered about by cult experts, but never proven to exist, a book detailing the lost civilizations, sacrificial rituals in exact detail. A magnificent find that garnered the attention of the Egyptian Exploration Society, a group closely connected to the Museum of Cairo. Dozens of archaeologists were already scattered throughout Egypt on exploratory digs, searching for the lost tombs of the pharaohs. The Egyptian Exploration Society, however, were interested in something more than just a pharaoh's burial chamber. They were interested in the occult and the mysterious secrets that could be discovered, hidden throughout the ancient land, and Vincent was just the man to find them. They contacted the newly famed archaeologist, and he began the task to quickly assemble a team for the excavation. The Exploration Society and Vincent himself already had a location in mind to begin their journey into Egypt's unknown. There were rumors of a secret burial chamber next to the tomb of Pharaoh Mahatat III's daughter, Princess Muntidi. The secret chamber is said to belong to Pharaoh Mahatat's mystic and advisor, Ramesses the Knowing. It is said he was a brilliant man for the times, with vast knowledge in medicines, leading to medical innovations in his day. He had the ear of the pharaoh, some would say completely brainwashed in fact, and he had the heart of the princess. In secret, however, he was deeply into the occult and a practitioner of its mysterious ways. He had a group of followers, eunuch priests and healers, that carried out his every order, his own personal bodyguard. Spells and rituals they would perform nightly, reading from the Book of Decay, with his lover, the pharaoh's daughter, by his side. His followers began calling him Ramesses II, and while he was the first of his name, he was referred to as the second out of respect for the demon god he worshipped and revered, the almighty Stulzabub, the demon god of shit and unholy excrement. It is said he learned of Stulzabub from a dying Roman soldier who was praying to the demon of shit with his final breaths. They say Stulzabub appeared to carry off the dead Roman soldier, but before returning to the underworld, He taught Rameshets the dark ways of the stool, and thanks to Rameshets, his kingdom of sludgy funk spread to another region, infested a whole new culture. Rameshets and his devoted priests, along with help from his lover, the Pharaoh's daughter, converted many prominent members of society. However, when the Pharaoh caught wind of what they were doing and found out of the affair he was carrying out with his daughter, he became enraged and sent his guards to arrest Rameshets and his followers. The Pharaoh's guards arrested Rameshets, their spears pressed against his throat. The Pharaoh smirked and began to condemn Rameshets to death. However, when he gave the order to kill his once trusted advisor, the Pharaoh guards quickly turned and sunk their spears into the Pharaoh himself. Unbeknownst to him, it was too late. The guards had already switched their loyalty and allegiance to Rameshets. With the Pharaoh now dead, he married the princess and became Pharaoh Rameshets II. The one-time advisor and mystic now spread the demonic god of shit's foul-smelling gospel to his subjects, converting his entire kingdom. Immediately, Rameshets commissioned the construction of temples and statues to honor the Lord of the Flies, but things eventually began to turn sour for the new Pharaoh. It began when he commissioned the reconstruction and renaming of one of Egypt's most famous structures, the Sphinx. He wanted to rename it the Great Sphincter and reshape it as giant ass cheeks. The disrespect shown towards the Great Sphinx broke the brown fog, constraining the people's minds, and they began to revolt. It didn't take long before they overthrew Pharaoh Rameshets and his followers and dispatched cruel, dishonorable deaths. The Pharaoh, his wife, and his followers were embalmed alive, their tongues removed, and all orifices and openings packed with feces from the deranged and the depraved. They were then tightly bound in strips of cloth, soaked in the brown liquid backdoor offerings of the condemned, and their organs removed and stuffed into jars packed with the stool of the enlightened. They sealed Rameshets in an unmarked tomb in an empty room surrounded by hieroglyphic warnings of his demise and the repercussions if he were ever to be unearthed. The room was sealed behind his wife's burial chamber, and while her death and embalming were horrific, her burial and burial chamber were kept to the traditions afforded to members of the royal family. Records of her marriage to Rameshets II were stricken from the history books, as was his entire rule. He is the lost Pharaoh, the demon's Pharaoh, the one who shall never be named. It is prophesied, if he should ever return, if the seal of his tomb ever broken, it will begin the 1,000 years of funk upon the land of Egypt and its people. Join us next time to find out the famed archaeologist Vincent Ravenscroft's discoveries, and if the curse is true. Whispers beneath the sand. The desert wind screamed as the excavation team pried open the tomb's entrance, buried beneath centuries of sand. Dr. Lydia Monroe, famed archaeologist, was the first to step inside. The warning was carved in blood-red pigment across the threshold. Disturb not the sleep of Ankara, or your flesh shall rot before your bones." She scoffed. Superstition. Inside, gold and jewels glittered in the torchlight. The sarcophagus, black basalt and covered in scarab carvings, stood in the center, its lid warm to the touch despite the icy air. The onyx eyes embedded in its surface seemed to follow Lydia as she circled it. She placed her hand on the lid. A whisper slithered into her ear. "Return what is mine." She froze. The air thickened. Her flashlight flickered. That night, the camp fell into chaos. Screams shattered the silence. Blood soaked the sand outside her tent. One man was found gutted, entrails strung from a tent pole like ceremonial garlands. Another was missing his face entirely, just a raw red skull grinning at the dawn. Only Lydia remained untouched. Drawn back to the tomb, she descended into the burial chamber. The sarcophagus was open, empty. Dark footprints led deeper underground, footprints made of ash and something darker, sticky. She followed, driven by dread and awe, deeper, through a narrow passage lined with crude paintings, images of flayed priests, hollowed eyes, and screams etched in dried blood. She stumbled into a chamber of mirrors, but they didn't reflect her. They showed corpses, versions of herself, mutilated in grotesque ways. One had her jaw torn off. Another's stomach writhed with scarabs, eating her from the inside. One wept black ichor. Then, one reflection smiled. It stepped out. "You woke him," it rasped, eyes burning gold. "Now you must feed the tomb." Hands erupted from the sand beneath her, skeletal rotting, pulling her down. She shrieked as razor-sharp fingers tore her skin. Her reflection grabbed her face, nails digging into her eyes. "You take his place." Darkness swallowed her scream. Weeks later, a second team arrived. The tomb was sealed again, silent, still. They found only one thing, a new carving on the sarcophagus lid. It showed Lydia, skin flayed, mouth sewn shut, bound in chains. And underneath, "Here lies Dr. Lydia Monroe, voice of Ankra. Do not open, do not wake her, do not bleed here." Beneath the sand, a heartbeat began to stir. Whispers returned, and the tomb was hungry. Silence of the Veil. They called it the Veil of Eternal Dusk. A funerary mask unearthed from a collapsed tomb in the western desert. No hieroglyphs, no records, just a shattered sarcophagus and a mask fused to the skull of a priestess with no tongue. The Cairo Museum of Antiquities put it on display anyway. 3 days later, the night guard was found eviscerated, skin peeled in strips, organs arranged in a spiral at the base of the mass pedestal. His eyes were missing. Security footage showed only static from 12:03 to 12:07 a.m. A perfect blackout. Amira took over the shift. She didn't believe in curses, only sick people and ancient paranoia. On her third night, the air turned thick. Her flashlight dimmed. 12:03 a.m. The temperature plummeted. The glass case containing the mask shattered with a hiss, shards hanging in the air like suspended tears. The mask lay face up, on the floor, pulsing faintly, wet with something dark. A sound echoed through the hall, wet chewing. Her flashlight flicked toward the sarcophagus across the room. The lid was open. Something crawled out, tall, thin, soaked in embalming fluid and blood, with strips of flesh wrapped around its limbs like ceremonial garb. Its face was the mask. Its jaw hung loose, drooling clots of gore. Amira ran. Behind her, screams erupted from the museum's locked rooms. Exhibits that should have been still. Glass cracked, bone snapped. A statue of Anubis exploded, showering the floor in obsidian and teeth. In the mummy wing, she tripped. Something landed behind her with a wet thump. Fingers dug into her ankle, sharp, bony, peeling. She kicked, but the thing only grinned, mask glinting, its mouth stretching wider than human, lined with blackened teeth. "Join the silence," it rasped. It plunged a dagger hard into her thigh. She screamed. Blood sprayed the wall. She crawled, leaving a trail. Her body grew cold. She could hear whispers inside her head, chanting in a dead tongue, burrowing like maggots. She made it to the security room, locked the door. The cameras flickered. Every exhibit was moving. A mummified child was pounding its fists against the glass. A priest's corpse was weeping tar. And in the central hall, the masked thing knelt over a new body, ripping out the heart and swallowing it whole. Amira backed away. Too late. She turned, and the mask was behind her. It lunged. Her scream died in a wet gargle. When the museum opened, no one noticed anything wrong until they reached the new display. A life-size figure of a woman in a guard uniform, torn open from sternum to navel, heart missing, eyes sewn shut. The card read, "She who saw." No one put it there, and no one dares to remove it. The Pharaoh's Grin. They cracked the seal at midnight. Deep within the sands of Saqqara, Dr. Eliza Vance and her excavation team unearthed a hidden burial chamber, untouched by time, cursed by silence. At the center of the chamber stood an ornate black gold sarcophagus, taller than any man, and carved with writhing serpents and screaming faces. "The lost pharaoh," Eliza whispered. "Neb-Karan, the smiling king." Hieroglyphs warned them not to proceed. "He who opens the box invites the grin of death." They didn't listen. With a hiss of ancient air, the lid slid open. Inside, the mummified pharaoh stood upright, wrapped in blood-darkened linens. A golden death mask grinned madly, his lips stretched impossibly wide, as though it had known a private joke for 3,000 years. They took the sarcophagus back to Cairo's museum vault, but the darkness followed. That night, Eliza awoke to whispering, low, hoarse, and full of sand. Her tent flaps fluttered through the air. In the reflection of her mirror, the mask grinned behind her. By morning, one of the interns was gone, his cot soaked red. The only clue, a faint trail of blackened footprints leading into the desert, each toe twisted backward. They tried to leave, but the jeeps wouldn't start. Satellite phones emitted only static. Beneath it, a distant chuckle. One by one, the team vanished. Dr. Ahmed was found kneeling before the open sarcophagus, eyes gouged out and filled with scarabs. "He's awake," he murmured, before the beetles crawled down his throat. Eliza fled into the tomb. Torches flickered against the stone. The murals had changed. Where once was gods, now stood Nebkaron, grinning wider in each panel, slaughtering priests, flaying servants, drinking the sun itself. His curse was not death, it was madness, eternal, grinning madness. A scraping echoed behind her. She turned, and there he stood, not dead, not alive, eyes like polished obsidian, jaw distended with inhumane delight. The grin split his face ear to ear. "Do you understand now?" he rasped, in a voice full of sandstorms and sorrow. "I smiled before death. I smile beyond it." She tried to scream, but laughter spilled out instead, uncontrollable, sharp, tearing at her lungs. Eliza was found days later, wandering barefoot in the dunes, her mouth stretched unnaturally wide. Her gums were torn, teeth cracked from endless smiling. She never spoke again. Back in Cairo, the sarcophagus was released and locked deep in the museum's sub-basement. Sometimes at night, the guards swear they hear laughter echoing up the marble halls. And in the darkest hours, if you press your ear to the vault door, you might hear him whisper, "Smile, you opened the box." I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.